Thank you for inviting me to share what I'm going to share with you. And I'm going to try and take you on a journey because I think that's the best way to sort of give you an idea of some of the things that we have worked on. And I never say I because I haven't done any of this by myself. And I guess I should just sort of share my screen and see what happens. I have a lot to show you, and if you can hang in for about an hour, I won't talk any longer than that. And I usually look out and see a bunch of faces and they all start to do this, and then I think, okay, I better stop talking. So you can either, thumbs up or thumbs down, and then I'll speed along. Let's see what happens if I share my screen. Share. Can you see something? What can you see?
Perfect.
Okay. Should I turn off my video, you think, so that we don't have any issues, or?
No, it seems to be okay.
You think
Yeah, it should be okay.
Okay, if something starts to crackle or pop, just let me know, because once you've seen me, you don't need to see me all the time. Now I've got, okay, so you should just, I don't know if you have yourselves on here, but I have images on my right that are overlapping my screen. So yeah, and I can't see my mouse, which is a little disconcerting. Anyway, okay, so the topic of my talk you can see here, and I called it a case study in how much information is enough. Having spoken with Z and asked him, what do you think I should talk about? So he said, well, just talk about things that you've done. So here we go. Yeah. Now I hope my image isn't covered up here, because if you've got what I've got on my screen, I've got a bunch of, yeah, let me.
Looks good, Hal.
No, perfectly clear, Hal.
It's okay? All right. So,
presenter.
Pardon?
That only happens to you because you're the presenter and you're looking at your slideshow and the other things. So don't worry.
Okay, fantastic. Alrighty, good. Because I just like to be sure. So anyway, let's start at the beginning. And I've always sort of been looking for the future. And one of my favorite science fiction writers is William Gibson. And he said, it's unevenly distributed. So I've been looking for it for a long time. As you can see, this is me as a student way back when, with a headset on, doing visual tracking, walking around the campus at my university. But it all really started, and you mentioned a background and being in retirement and unretired and all the rest of it. I spent my summer when I was 16 years old at Expo 67 in Montreal, which was a groundbreaking world exhibition for many, many reasons. And I spent my summer there immersed in things that look like this. And remember some of these images, because they'll sort of reappear in different forms throughout the rest of this presentation. It was an award-winning exhibition, and I was blown away. And that was the turning point where I decided I want to study how to do this stuff somewhere. And I went to Concordia in Montreal to the communication arts program. So you've had a little bio of me, but here's a little longer summary. The important part is, I'm still around. I'm at Sunway University now, and have been since about 2016. And I did the calculations today, 46 years. So there you go. One thing I did a little while ago was this sort of diagram to figure out what it is I had actually been working on all of those 46 years. And I did them in little arcs because I thought, oh, that's kind of an interesting way to do it. And you can see that some things have come and gone. You see 3D media technology down there and 3D HD TV. Those things have sort of come and gone. Children's television, of course, but then virtual heritage, virtuality, immersion, cultural imaginary, all of those things are still going and are part and parcel of what I'm going to talk about for the rest of the time. And across the top, there's audience, information design, and impact. And in the abstract for this talk, I mentioned information design, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward. So here's Sunway University in Kuala Lumpur on a good day with a blue sky. And yes, that's where we are. And we're a small school, but getting bigger every year. And we have 4 departments, as you can see, and 1 research center with a new research center that's just been approved and coming online very shortly. Whoops. Now, what did I do? I don't want that. Hang on. There we go. You can find our research center on the university's website. Just put CRCDM in and you'll find a lot of more details and online resources and publications for things that I'm talking about today. These are some of our collaborations, past and present. So we've reached out and have a lot of colleagues and people we've done small bits and pieces and larger bits and pieces with over the years. A lot of them focused around Asia for obvious reasons, many of them in the UK. We have a partner, a dual degree partner with Lancaster University, so they're in there as well. NTU down in Singapore, etc. So I won't read them all to you. And these are some of our ongoing projects. Some of them are older than others, and some of them are new. The handbook project deals with Malaysian folklore stories and people that build and make things with their hands. Puakumbu is about the textile weavers of East Malaysia. The boat builder, which I will talk about it in depth. We've started to do some exploration in Narratives 360. And Park Bench Sojourn is Matt's project, and the others are also on the list. So let's get on with what I'm here to talk about. So I always start with this quote, and I start with this very strange image. And the former CEO of Intel said this, that we're moving to a world of immersive experiences. And I think after all of the presentations this morning, that's become quite evident. And this image is from an exhibition and a project we did on the mask carvers, which I think Dallas and Human spoke a little bit about earlier. And this was a 360-degree video capture of a dance that the Mamari carvers do every year to celebrate changing of the seasons and harvest, etc. And we shot it in 360 because they perform it in 360 in a circle. So this image sort of relates back to that. So I'm talking about, I mentioned heritage science, and it also relates, of course, or is part and parcel of digital heritage. And we have a number of different intersecting circles of people. We have humanists and social scientists, of course, and then we have computer scientists and engineers, depending on the project, and of course, artists, designers, and other creators. And most importantly, and which gets quite often forgotten, is who you're doing this for. Who's the public? Who are the receivers of this? Who is your audience? And I always spoke at length about this to my students, because I said, you know, you have to know who you're doing this for before you get started. And that will start to tell you different things as you go through a project, even if you're doing a video or an advertising campaign, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So heritage science, I think, involves all of these things. I added, the definition is really the gray things, and I added in capturing, because I think the capture part is equally as important as the rest of it, because if you don't start with good material, all of the rest of it will not be quite the impact that you might want. So these are some of the other things that I'm going to sort of cover in talking about the projects, or the main project that I'm going to deal with today. The cultural imaginary, Stuart Hall talked about this in 1997, so it's nothing new, but it's certainly something that we're able to explore in exciting ways with the technology that we have at our hands now. When I started, thinking and working and dabbling around in virtual reality in the late 80s, early 90s, the technology was so cumbersome and so expensive that it was not as exciting and accessible as it certainly is now. And I think the other areas are equally important. Designing what it is you want to communicate to people and how you represent that back, because we're, in a way, I mentioned in the abstract, performing heritage, because we're capturing it and representing it or performing it in a different way than it actually, I think, exists within the cultural imaginary of digital heritage. And maybe that will become clearer as we go along. Information design. This is a term that has been used widely across various disciplines. But for us, or for me, it's always been how we capture, create, and select, and also test various pieces of reality or their mediated form to elicit some kind of response in the people, whether it's a single person or a large group of audiences. And a lot of that came from my, and I didn't know it at the time, my impressions and the very vivid memories that I still have of Expo 67 and all of the experiences that were shown there. And I had the privilege of working with Miroslav Malik. I should have his picture on this page. I forgot to put it back in. He was one of the chief designers of the Czechoslovakian pavilions, which swept all of the awards at Expo for all of the multi-image presentation and the interactive audience film and all of the other great experiences that were there. And he stayed in Canada after Expo 67 and came to the university I was at. And I ended up being his teaching assistant and then worked with him for about 25 years until he passed in 1998. This, I think I'm probably telling you something everybody is already aware of, but for us, certainly in the School of Arts and in CRCDM, research creation is a central guiding point. And it took me almost 2 years to get the university, to get Sunway University administration to understand what research creation was about. They could understand research and they could certainly understand creation, but when you put the two of them together, they got a little confused. And I said, well, it's this. And I didn't invent it. SSHRC in Canada did in 2012, or at least recognized it as as area that they would fund highly. So Social Science and Humanities is a granting agency in Canada. So all combinations of research for creation, creation from research, et cetera, and creative presentations of research. So I hope to illustrate, again, some of that in the rest of the talk that follows. I mentioned the post-digital era in the abstract as well. And Oliver Groh, who has written a lot about media arts and a history of media arts and digital technology, said this about the post-digital turn, that we have, opportunities to access and create new experiences for cultural heritage through immersive installations and illusions and data visualizations. And you've seen some previews of those in the 10-minute talks that preceded me and us now. And then, of course, there's the question of the post-digital audience. And I always ask people, who are you doing this for? Are you doing it for everybody or somebody's, or are you going to do different versions of things? So post-digital audience, as we're probably very well aware now, want to be entertained. They want everything now. They want it everywhere. They want it their way. They want to share it, and they want to create something. So it's a lot of I wants, but that's the nature of the digital technologies that we've used. And that was a question at the end of the session this morning. When do you think? I think it was, when do you think we sort of get hooked on it? I think for me now, having more time and less time, and through COVID, it's almost an addiction, unfortunately, especially American politics. But we won't go into that or the debates. So, you know, the post-digital impact has certainly helped. And last but not least, transformative research. And I heard Anne Balsamo talk about this at a conference. And these are three key areas that I think are important to the kind of work that we do. And her book, Designing Culture, in 2011, is really excellent at laying out some of her approaches and her ideas about transformative research. And I use this again at the university to put forward the notion that we're really looking for new ways of communicating the meaningfulness of university research to a broader audience and using fresh expressive modalities. I think that's very important for everybody, that we're not doing this just for ourselves, but we really need to get it outside the university to as broad an audience or audiences as is possible. Okay, so Malaysia. I'm going to take you on a journey to this little teeny tiny island on the west coast there. You see it. It's that little tiny blob under the red marker called Pankor Island. It's about a 45-minute or maybe an hour and a half, depending on the traffic, drive from Kuala Lumpur. And we heard that there were some interesting things going on out there as far as boat building were concerned. So about almost 4 years ago now, the guys went out, and you've met most of them in the talks this morning. And they did a little recce to see what was up on Pankor Island. And there's a lot of boat building that goes on the west coast, or at least there used to be, and the east coast of Malaysia. And they're very different because the west coast, the island of Sumatra is over there, and the straits are there. And the ocean is very quiet and it's very shallow. And on the east coast of Malaysia, the ocean, of course, goes on for miles and miles and miles before it hits any land other than tiny islands. And it's very clear water, beautiful water, but it gets very, very rough in the winter. So the styles of the boats were a little different, but boat building is a tradition that exists in Malaysia for a long, long time. So what we found was this wonderful little fishing community on Pankor Island, where they still fish, you know, very vigorously using traditional techniques and mend fishing nets the old way. And we found a little tiny boatyard tucked along the beach, very inconspicuous, building boats, building 70-foot wooden fishing boats using traditional methods. And we thought, oh, this might be quite interesting. So we started to, you know, I say the royal we, the guys started to collect images. And while their recce was going on, and started to talk to the guys and watch what they were doing. And it was really interesting because we were welcomed there almost immediately. And we explained to them what we were looking to do and why we were there. And they said, yeah, sure, you can watch us work, just don't get in the way and don't let anything sharp fall on you. So that's what we did. And they build these huge wooden fishing boats all by hand. So we thought there's something more going on here than just building boats. We met lots of the craftsmen, many of them older Chinese fellows, and they work with their hands using very simple power tools in a very modest workshop, building these boats, fashioning wood into boats. And It's a lot of physical labor. And as you can see, they're not young, most of them. And they're very meticulous with their work, building these big boats, and extremely dedicated. Then we met this man, Mr. Go, and he was the key to the castle, essentially. He's the master boat builder. And when we met him, I thought, okay, now we have a storyteller and we have someone we can work with, and it becomes a personal story as well as archiving and capturing digital heritage. So we started this project called the Hainan Boat Builder of Pancor. And we called it a transmedia project because we were going to use all forms of media that we could possibly apply to build an archive of this boat building tradition. That's sort of the description there. I'm not going to read it for you. You've probably already read it. But the key thing here was we wanted to make this sort of an exemplar project and bring to bear on it all of the expertise that we had and experiment with all of the tools that we had in order to create a digital documentation to preserve this dying heritage in Malaysia, because it is, or was, or probably still is, slowly disappearing because the people who do it are old. The process is held in the mind of Mr. Go. He's the master builder. There are no full blueprints or diagrams, and you'll see some examples of that as we go along, to leave to people. So you'd have to watch how this is done in order to learn it. So what resulted from this is this list here. Most recently, I gave a seminar at Harvard at the Asia Center. We did an expo in San Francisco in 2018 at the Virtual Systems and Multimedia Conference. We did an exhibition at Sunway. We launched it in 2016 when VSMM was at Sunway. We have a high definition, well, it's actually 4K, documentary that was entered in the Canada-China International Film Festival in 2016, was nominated for the Best Documentary. Unfortunately, that went to a Chinese film, or maybe rightfully so. And then we have a huge archive and a number of articles and book publication and lots of conference publications. So the output has been very broad and extremely deep, and it's almost like a never-ending project. We keep finding new ways to explore it, and you saw one of those with that mobile exhibition where you could view the boat in any location. So we're experimenting with how to bring it out into in different ways. A little teaser for you. That was a teaser we used for the exhibition. One of the things I like to do with projects is this sort of little bubble diagram. And I did this in one version way back when, and I spent, yesterday afternoon rebuilding it into a different form to sort of illustrate what we were dealing with once we found Mr. Go, and the areas that we wanted to encompass, or that we found when we started to work with the boat builders on Pancor Island. So it's, you know, it's a combination of all of these things. We had traditional skills and tacit knowledge that only exists in Mr. Go's head. We had a sea heritage, and we had a deep impact of the Chinese culture on the whole overall process of boat building. They have lots of rituals that they do when they lay the keel, when they launch the boat, and different times of the year. And then we had, you know, we had the big physical boats, we had a workshop location, and we had the characters of the craftsmen that were working every day. And they were quite a cast of characters, let me tell you. Memory was a huge thing here, because it was Mr. Go's memory that we were really trying to access and archive for him, because he's 70 years old and he's still doing this. And then, of course, we had the whole building process, and were there plans, and where does the wood come from, and the launching, which is a big ritual, and then the other rituals that they go through. And of course, preserving and sharing it through documentary exhibition and everything else that we tried to do. We did interviews, we did 4K captures, we did 360-degree video captures, and all of that tied into trying to create a future for this area of heritage that is slowly disappearing in Malaysia. There used to be something like 20 boat builders on Pancor Island. Now there's 5. So it became very evident to us in talking with them that this was starting to fade quite quickly. So the urgency became very clear to us. And then there was also, you know, the constituencies of the fishermen who work the boats and the owners who buy them and commission them from Mr. Go. And he does, if he's lucky, maybe 2 of these boats a year. And as you could see in the video there, there was one that was almost finished and one that was started. So as soon as they finish one, they usually start another one. And then, of course, we wanted to delve into building the cultural imaginary of this and creating a transformative research project out of it all. So those are some of the things that we thought about. So we started this project. It spanned about 2 years with approximately 6 site visits. And I think that says you are all covering up the words, so you can see it. I think there's 12 plus hours of 4K video. And we did at least 10 individual 360 videos around the workshop. And probably I asked Dallas the other day, you know, what do you estimate the number of photographs are? And he said, easily 12 to 1,500 photographs. So we had a huge amount of content, and we went about, you know, it was almost trying to be everywhere and capture everything. And when I talk about how much information is enough, when you find something as rich as this that's endangered, it almost becomes obsessive, and you try and capture everything, but you can't. And I'll revisit that as we go along. So it's always a balance of how much is enough. We tried scanning one of these boats with a laser scanner. That was fun. And it resulted in, you know, something that looked like this, as everybody who has ever used a laser scanner knows. It was quite a big object. And we thought, well, okay, we've tried that. Let's see what else we can do. And I'm going to pop over now to the 360-degree videos of the workshop, if this works. Hopefully it does. Okay, there we go. So we took the camera, and this camera is now, it's sitting on a rock. So you start off, you sort of start off at the rock, and then you're in the workshop, and you've got two of the guys who are here.
We can only see a gray screen.
You can only see a gray screen. Oh,
Yeah,
no.
and your cursor.
Okay, hang on. Why did that happen? Sharing is paused. Oh, bring your shared window to the front. All right, how do I do that? Whoops, hang on. It's because I've got my, hang on, let me do this. Share screen. Ah, there we go. Safari, it should be, let me see. Click to exit. Can you see this now? What do you see? Stop
It's
share.
white
You should,
now.
Yeah,
But
it's
still
white.
Blank. It's blank. It's white now. Yeah.
Okay, hang
But
on.
I did see your desktop, a combination of windows earlier.
Okay, here we go. You got this one?
We've got that one. Yeah.
Okay, this is what I wanted to show. Have you still got it?
Still got
Yes,
it.
yes.
Okay, perfect. So let me, there we go. Okay, so this is the 360 video. So it starts, you're on a rock by the water in front of the boats, and then it pops you into the workshop, and you can watch these two guys work a little bit. And of course, we shot it so that you have to look around and discover that there's another guy up here. And the audio is the audio that was on the location. They're whistling, they're listening to the radio. And then you find yourself, oh, right under the stern of one of the boats that's sitting there with their pet dog down by the water. Then out on a keel of the other boat that's just being started. So we tried to give people an interesting look at different locations of the workshop and work with audio cues as well, because this one is very mysterious. You're inside the boat, and then all of a sudden you're up on the boat. So you have to constantly look. So we took advantage of the 360 nature of the video and wanted people to explore it. And then you're back down inside the boat with this fellow working. And of course you can see that it's no mean feat. They construct these boats. And then of course it takes you back out and you're up between the two boats that are being built, one with just a frame and the other one getting close to finished, sitting between them. And then last but not least, I asked the guys to sort of put you inside and give you a feeling of the scale of these wooden boats from an inside and an up overview. So that was that experiment, and this should be, where were we? Where? I need to go back to, all right. Share. Can you see back to where we were?
Yep,
Yes? Okay, perfect.
perfect.
All right. So having, let me turn this sound down. Having explored scanning and 360, one very wavy day, the guys went out in a boat, and Human decided that the model that one of the boat builders had built and gave to us, he was going to make a model out of it. So this is a highly accelerated process of him modeling the boat, of course. in combination with looking and measuring and the scan. So we had some very interesting models that we could then illustrate the structure, or at least the shape and the style of these boats, either in wireframe or in fully rendered color. And the colors are the colors of the boats that are there. And then, of course, we could put them in a virtual ocean and even animate them. So that became another asset that was quite interesting, that would tell part of the story of these boats being built. And that'll become clear as we get to the exhibition. So we decided, okay, let's do this transmedia exhibition. And we did it at the university in October of 2017. We probably had easily 1,000 visitors come to this over the days that we held it. And I think it had quite an interesting impact. We had a rapid prototyping machine, so humans' model could be output, and we gave it to visitors. We did an augmented reality book incorporating some of the video and some of the 1,500 images that we had, so people could take it away with them from the exhibition. Whoops, there we go. So that's, again, repurposing the model and some of the videos, which were all that was the 360 that I just showed you, queued into the book as well. And then one of the things about the gallery, we had this huge pillar in the middle of the gallery. And I said to Z, and he can tell you the great gory details of this story, I said, let's cover it with images and do some AR with it. And I sort of asked him to take on that project, which he gladly did, and learned a tremendous amount, I'm sure, in the process, and started off with a little tiny model, actually, of this pillar and the images to test it all out. And then we had them printed, and we wrapped this gigantic pillar. And we did it for a number of reasons. One, to give people a different experience of some of the content, to represent a lot of the assets that we had, and also to experiment with a form of display that asks you to engage with the device to view another layer of information on top of what you're already seeing that's physically wrapped this big, huge pillar in the middle of the room. And people started to talk to each other on each side of the pillar and move around it. So it was really quite an engaging thing. And then we had, of course, we had a 24-minute documentary that we did, that we edited down to 12 minutes and projected it floor to ceiling on one of the walls in the gallery to tell sort of a reduced or a shortened story from the 24-minute documentary. And then we had this very strange space over in the corner that I thought, well, let's project the models onto this and let people just, get a sense of the boat from the model on this very strange wall space, and just have them blend into each other as sort of a motif. And that was a very brief look at some of the elements of that particular exhibition as we started to acquire them. And every time we did an exhibition of any kind, and this is revisiting back to the pillar, we tried to make them or incorporate aspects into them that it was an experiment at the same time. We always did audience surveys of the people who came to visit, what they liked, what they didn't like, and we would observe them and see how much time they spent doing things, and also, of course, take questions from them on site. So this is a little bit better view of the pillar. You can see it was quite a substantial block in the middle of the room, and then people started to interact with it. So it was about modalities of serendipitous browsing, and it was also a form of social interaction. So you encounter this, there is print on it, so you can see it without any device, but then you could pick up your phone or an iPad that we had there and interact with it and get more information of it out in different layers. And we had a little cardboard viewer. So if you had your phone, one of the sections of AR, you actually got the 3D wire model and you could look at it on your phone and you would be inside the model. And the kids really liked that because it was kind of matrix-like. It was green wire mesh, and they liked interacting with that. So it was a really interesting experiment, and Z did a fantastic job of working on the AR of it. And we had lots of versions of it. I kept saying, no, maybe no, let's try that, and let's try this. And we wanted people to physically move too. So they had to go down to look at the stuff at the bottom, and they had to sort of go around. And so they had to physically engage with the thing in order to get the interaction and the impact of the images and the information that was there. And I think it worked. At least I hope it did. This is the AR book. So we had a lot of content that we layered into this book. And of course it was dedicated to Mr. Go, as you saw in some of the video. We also built these buntings that we took, or these banners. Buntings is a Malaysian term, I think. If you have the zapper, you could actually scan these little codes that are on here, the little zapper codes. And so we had these at one of the exhibitions as another way of letting people interact with some of the content. I'm going to let you watch a little, at least the beginning of this. It's 12 minutes. How long have I spoken for? Where's a clock? Almost an hour. I'm fine. I'll start it off because I think it gives you some really wonderful insight into this fantastic boat builder, the person, the man. And it was a very emotional video for us to do. It was 24 minutes long originally as a large document. And for the exhibition, I said, people aren't going to sit down for 24 minutes in an exhibition. So I asked Dallas, God bless him, and we worked very hard to reduce it to the essence in 12 minutes. I said, it doesn't have to be 12 minutes, but it has to be less than 24 minutes, not more than 15, but somewhere around an exhibition time frame for short attention span people, which everybody is now, especially when you're sitting in an exhibition. But we, as I said, presented it in 4K on floor to ceiling. It was huge. It was absolutely huge. So I'll start it, and we'll see how it goes. No? Now we have audio. Oh my gosh.
It was worth it. Sounds great.
我叫吳雲江，今年69歲咯。咁樣都係做到而家，好似都做到40幾年咯。今日學知道而家都足足有差不多有50年。呢個我師傅做到，我繼續同佢做學到幾年，不過我又好似走翻。第度做走嚟走去咯，好似我哋新增做乜事，做呢個船骨咯，呢個船骨最重要嘛，呢3樣嘢，一支船頭，一支船骨，一支船尾嚇，呢3樣嘢咯。 冇圖都係有一個圖啊！你愛好，我俾你睇一個圖，
He's quite a
我自己
character.
畫嘅，我自己畫冇經過呢個 engineer 啊，自己就係 engineer 呢個冇師傅啊，唔係讀出嚟，唔係考嘅，係自己做出嚟嘅。哦，即是我哋嘅線好似而家咁樣我去做啊，又我企啲搭你企個線頭啊，我哋同樣係咁樣噶。線嗰個線咧就睇你企線頭，揀個日子好啊，嗰個日子好日啦啊，先起線頭。有個儀式就係講啊，幫塊篷布咗啊，我哋拉個長頭線頭起嚟咯，拉好起油之後咪點樣拜神咯，拜啲生果咁咯。Bạn em không? Thấy không? Phải cậu đó mà trường mình. Cậu à? Sao cũng có. 啊！我哋嘅樣板呢個模板啊，雕字嗰度雕字，嗱邊嚟雕字？嗰個模板啊，即係我哋嘅線有一個模型㗎啦。我哋有做一個模型咁大個，我哋嗰啲木材嚟由畫到按幾支咁樣畫出嚟咯。係一支唔同嘅，有啲做曲啲又做小曲啲又，而家嗰啲又曲嚟，呢啲曲起咁樣啦。線尾係起一支柴咁樣，然後中間嗰度要挖一個窿，挖個窿俾放一個蝦尾，叫做蝦尾咯，打水嘅咯啊！安落去安低嗰啲線骨之後，個排骨之後，然後我哋開始釘板咯，好似依家咁樣咯啊！呢個淨係釘緊板咯，封密起咯，封咗密咗我哋就做嗰個入邊嘅嘢咯。做一啲前倉啊、車房嗰啲啊，做起嚟車橋啊，咁樣做起嚟嗰啲嘢做起嚟咯。通常咧朝頭早我哋就會水退啊嘛，一係落水都係要水退，我哋正放嗰隻線放落嚟咯，放落成之後，然後佢哋就可以上去拜下神咯，拜下神就等住個水大咯，水大先正嚟拖咯，嗰隻線咯。嗰個拜後咗，然後嗰等住嗰陣時啊，嗰啲嘢拜咗俾佢食下嘢咯，輕鬆下咁樣啦，慶祝啊啲時候我哋線做好啦。拜下神，點解要拖落去咁咯？ 舊時就比較競爭咯，舊時嗰啲線廠多10幾間線廠喎，咁樣一味做定到依家呢個線廠慢慢依類就少咗咯，咁樣就要做到依家咯，依家連得5間線廠啫。好似我哋依家五間線廠啦得翻3間福建人，1間又寧夏龍岩好似福建咁樣噶啦，寧夏就得我1間海南人。呢個做事呢行即使你有人做咧，就係有前途嘅。不過行都出動員嘅嘛，係咪？呢個而家係個問題出到講，而家冇呢個年青人嚟接班，咁樣我哋喺呢度後生完全揾唔到後生嘅人喎。而家跟住每人都冇法子嘅嘛，一船咁大隻都冇工人都係好難做啊！你冇幾個好似頭手工都好艱難做噶嘛。退休就係講你得閒嘛，好似仔女自己外出嘛，中意咪喺呢度去2-3個禮拜咁嗰2-3個禮拜，唔中意又翻嚟呢度住下咁樣咯。有老人老咗有一個時間就係咁行下睇下咯，睇嗰啲先咁樣生活就咁樣過埋個幾年冇做唔可以做工啦。我啲海南人，我18啲海南島嚟嘅然後我就讀咗路了，我18歲之後我就然後就念麼大學去讀學工，就學工出嚟又就出嚟去多一個地區了，我就去多這個多工了然後就接沒接斷家多就接到多嚟多接多要多個人
So there you go. That's Mr. Go's accounting of his trade and his career and his life. And as you can see, this was not done by any one person. Okay, so that was shown at the Transmedia exhibition that we had. Parts of it were shown at Digital Heritage in San Francisco in 2018. Our booth was right next to the Google booth, so we got talking to them and they got talking to us. We have a Google Arts and Culture page or exhibit that you can find online that, oh dear, it's not going to go and do this again. Hang on, we'll just go back to where we were, where all of the exhibition is archived in the Google Arts and Culture Institute. This piece you saw, I think Dallas talk about, this was the first version of the mobile boat builder exhibit. So you've seen the evolution of this. This was the first sort of experiment with it, and it was a little clunky, but we were exploring if we could take it outside and have it shown anywhere, and that you could walk around and interact with the boat. I mean, ultimately, there's going to be a lot more that we would like to add to this. So, you know, this entire project, as I have said, is dedicated to Mr. Go and his team. And he's just a wonderful, wonderful man. And as I said at the beginning, he was the key that unlocked the story for the entire project. Without him, it would have been extremely difficult for us to have something that's really meaningful in the way of the story to share in this fading cultural heritage tradition in Malaysia. Some of the other projects, just very briefly, that we've done are the mask project, and I think Human and Dallas talked about that. This started when we were at another university, but we've continued it at Sunway. Again, it's an extremely rich cultural heritage tradition. The Maori people live on a small island, a Carey Island. It's surrounded by oil palm plantations, and their land is being slowly taken away from them. And they have a very rich storytelling and heritage tradition. They carve masks. So we were able to capture the stories and illustrate them for the first time. The stories were told by the carver, because it's an oral tradition, and again, fading if it's not passed on. I'm not going to go into that because there is material on our website that you can have a look at. But it was a fantastic project as well. We worked very hard for 6 months to document it all. You can see Dallas is in these pictures. And it was much greater, yes, much greater than the sum of its parts. So you can see various aspects of it, from computers to being out in the mud, shooting the carvers, chopping down trees, and actually getting the raw wood for their carving of the masks. Dallas is at the bottom middle frame there with one of the dancers from that video that I started with at the beginning, the round video. And again, we had over 1,000 visits there. And these are all of the Maori people that came. We sent a big bus for them, and they came to the exhibition and spent almost the entire afternoon there and watched everything with great awe, because they had never seen their stories brought to life before. And they loved them. They absolutely loved what we did, because we worked so closely with the carver who was telling the story and carving the masks. All the kids sat there, and it was, again, a 12-minute series of 6 2-minute stories over 12 minutes. And they sat there and they did not move. And some of the parents said, our kids had never been so still for so long. And one of the other projects that we did, and we're still working on with Dr. Wei Lin at the University of Malaya, is the weavers, the Iban weavers of East Malaysia. And again, this is a very, very rich tradition. They do all of the natural dyes. They do all of this by hand. And each of the patterns has a story associated with it. And the master weaver, who's now close to 80 years old, holds all of those stories in her head, and she can look at a pattern in front of her and interpret it and recount the story that's been passed down from her grandmother and her great-great-grandmother. So we did an entire exhibition and an archive of this. We illustrated the stories in consultation with the master weaver again, and then had a really interesting portrayal of them in the exhibition. And you see 2 of the weavings that are being used as part of this semicircular screen that we projected the origins story on. And we shot it or did it in black and white, so that it could be projected on the textiles at the same time. There's poor Dallas sitting on the floor programming something on the wall in the back just before we opened the exhibition. And again, lots of visitors, young, old, everybody in between. The Minister of Heritage came to open the exhibition. And people just kept coming and coming and coming. So it was a wonderful, wonderful process. So I'm going to wrap up with some of these considerations concerning creating things with digital heritage. And these are some of the pluses. There's certainly an interest in digital heritage. As I mentioned, the urgency to do this because things are disappearing. And lots of access to remote or closed sites, and many, many people around the world are dealing with this everywhere. And it brings, I think, to light a global humanity and the need for this international, intercultural communication. It also, I found, satisfies this sort of urge for time travel and going back in time and trying to understand what came before it's gone. Also interest in students. A lot of our students are becoming quite interested in this area, which is good because they can apply their media skills to it. And certainly transdisciplinary approach to the projects is key for sure. So that's a big plus. Some of the pluses or minuses, the born digital content can be delicate. And many people have written and talked about the vanishing virtual or the disappearing digital, that just because it's digital doesn't mean it's going to last forever. And it's also quite intensive and often expensive. And then the other thing that I've noticed and we've grappled with in everything that we've done is, and anybody that works in VR has done this as well, are the Hollywood perceptual stereotypes. Hollywood grappled or grabbed onto virtual reality very, very early and portrayed it in a way that people came to expect when they actually encountered it. And it never lived up to the Hollywood stereotypes yet, nor should it in some cases. Certainly it has to be curated and archived and reversioned. And we've done a number of different reversioning of things. We're always trying to build on them and improve them based on the feedback that we get from people. Quite often it serves to increase site tourism, which again can be a plus or a minus depending on what you're trying to do here. And then again, of course, you have to deal with the ellipses. There will be holes in the heritage value because you're trying to balance how much information is enough. And, you know, you can go on and on and on, and you will never capture everything because there will always be something hidden inside people that they might not share. We've been very lucky with the people that we've dealt with the Mamori, with the Iban, with the boat builders, because we take the time to get to know them and they open up and share their stories with us. You saw from Mr. Go, that very emotional ending that we asked him, whatever you haven't said, you can say from your heart. And that's what he did at the end of the video. He looks right at the camera and talks to you. So there's always that balance. And at a certain point you have to move on to something else, and you just have to wrap it and say, we've done the best we can to answer that question, how much information is enough? And even though we'd like to get more, I think we have enough to do justice to what we're trying to create or build here. And last but not least, some of the challenges. Supporting digital heritage research, creation, and innovation. It's always difficult because it's not wowsy most of the time. It's not something that you call it's really, you know, sexy and people want to throw money at it. So, you know, the support is very, very important at a university level, at a local level, at an international level, and everybody grapples with this. encouraging transdisciplinary collaboration. We've been very lucky, as I said, have worked with programmers and graphic artists and designers of all kinds across all of the disciplines in the projects we've done. We want to create access and engagement. So for the Mamari people, we gave them back the documentary that we did on the carving, and they show it at their cultural center on Carey Island very regularly. They have a small theater there, and we gave them a copy of most of the content that we created in video for them to share during their celebrations that they have every year. This is a big one: managing collections, archiving, curating, and representing the content in various venues and various forms. And we grapple with this. And the guys are very dedicated to the archiving and cataloging and curating the content. And it'll come to a point where it'll have to be curated forward in technology. I might not be around to see that, but hopefully somebody will be around to help that happen. And then also, I just talked about this technological evolution and the vanishing virtual and the disappearing digital. And then, of course, last but not least, determining that critical how much is enough. So we've tried to do that to the best of our ability with a very small team. So I think that brings me to my closing quote by Marshall McLuhan. And he wrote this a long time ago, and it's so true these days, when business was our culture into an era when culture should or will be our business. And hopefully we can continue to work towards that in the projects that we've got going now. So I think that's where I say thank you and say goodbye.